Welcome to the Beyond Cinema Studio, Mr. John Akomfra.
Thank you, sir.
The Stuart Hall Project.
Yes.
Talk to me about taking something that's such a, I mean, it's about this great thinker, Stuart Hall. How do you take something that's so inherently not visual and try and present it as a visual medium?
I mean, I think the first thing that you do if you choose to do something like this is you think, let's find the bits that are similar to the field I work in. And we're fortunate because Stuart Hall, for all his working life, was on radio and television. And I think he was just one of these guys who was committed to trying to make complicated ideas come across to a popular audience. And so we had about 800 hours of him, radio and television, talking from about 1955, pretty much all the way up to 2000.
Yeah.
You know, so in that weird, connected but indirect way, you get access to his ideas, but in a more accessible form. You know?
When did you first become aware of him?
I'm like one of those people who came across him on television, actually, as a kid. I was out late, I shouldn't have been, because it was 11 something. And this black guy comes on TV talking about, I don't know, something, class or equality or one of these big themes. I remember looking at him thinking, damn, when I grow up, I want to be just like this guy. That cool, that hip, you know. And it was only much later on, in fact, that I realized he was this founding figure of cultural studies and, you know, identity theory and cultural theory. All that came later.
But that's interesting though, because you say you came on and you saw this black guy.
Yeah.
And as you say, it was all about cultural identity.
Yes.
I don't think he declared himself as a black guy for a while.
Yes.
You,
way later.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
you
know,
had that impression of him maybe at the same time that he was coming into that
yes,
realization.
here's the interesting thing. You know, this guy who had, I mean, a kind of immeasurable significance, impact on our lives. And I'm talking post-migrant kids growing up in the 70s who don't want to be athletes or singers or dancers. You know, you're scrabbling around for models, essentially, blueprints of what one could do. And I think he was a compelling and charismatic example. And yet, at that time, he's not himself sure necessarily whether he's, and I think that's in a way what's characterized the Black British scene. There's a kind of ambivalence in how it defines identity.
How many people do you think are actually, like what kind of percentage of the population, the British population, even know that they've been affected by this guy?
I think a very small.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet you watch this film and you see him from 55 onwards talking about the post-colonial, about independence, about television, about equality, nuclear disarmament, and you know, every single area that he touched on defined some facet of post-war British life, you know. But yeah, you're right, he's probably not known at all.
So talk to me about, just in terms of process, what did you say, 8,000 hours of footage you had to?
I would say altogether about 8,000 hours.
So in terms of from the time you started culling to what was the end total runtime?
I like that word, culling. I like because I think that pretty much defines what we did. It took 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And the process initially was, okay, let's find the significant moments. You know, let's find the moment when you could sense that he himself is clear that this is the cultural studies moment or the nuclear disarmament moment. You know, let's find those. They're difficult, but when you do, everything else kind of slots in. You know, you suddenly think, okay, well, we've got a kind of narrative here. You know, a sort of through line.
Right.
And what made it challenging was that I wanted it to be not just a kind of intellectual portrait, but also a portrait of a figure, a personality.
Yeah.
You know, because he comes to England in 1951, he's 19, 20, you know, so he's growing up in front of us.
Yeah.
You know, and I wanted that quality to also come across so that you realize as you watch it just how precisely what he's saying about identity works. It's provisional, it's contingent, it's dependent on a kind of conversation with the outside world. You know.
What do you think he would say about this sort of media scenario going on about him?
Well, when I showed it to him and told him we were going to Sundance, I think he was partly happy because his son's a DP and he's here with the film. You know, thinking, oh great, you meet my son. But, you know, there is a sense in which, you know, when you're 82, 83, this is an alien land, you know?
Yeah.
He's not entirely unfamiliar with it because he's worked in, you know, cultural studies for so long, but it is slightly foreign.
Yeah.
And I think he finds it, I mean, I think he would have problems with it if it was just personality at the expense of some of the ideas.
Would you have made the film without his blessing?
No, no. I mean, for me, it's not a traditional documentary in that sense. What I'd set out to do was an act of rescue. I wanted to relocate the remains of all of those disparate radio and television programs that he'd been involved with over 50 years. And I needed his help to do that. I needed him to decode some of them to me, you know, for me.
Yeah.
Who's that? What moment was that? That kind of thing. So it's very much a collaboration, you know.
And just like he decoded some of it for you,
yes,
you're decoding it for the audience.
This is the bizarre.
So you probably had to understand him on a level that you were able to almost transliterate or translate what he was saying in order to communicate it.
You know.
But so that must have been just a sheer. Is that just sheer passion that made you want to do that?
Just bloody mindedness as well. I mean, the nicest thing that anyone said about the film so far was at the premiere 3 days ago when his son saw it, and he said to me, you know, I think you've really caught the essence of it. You know, that wasn't the intention. I hadn't set out to catch the essence of Stuart Hall, but I did want to make sure that everything that was in it I understood the context, what he was trying to do, because I needed to understand where to go next.
Yeah.
You know, and that meant really fully appreciating the moment in which he was speaking, the context, because of course you've got in the film not just him speaking, but the array of archival material from that period. So if he's speaking about equality,
how does he define himself inevitably or finally? Does he, as a Marxist, as a left-winger, does he use the term cultural theorist? As if someone asked him what he did for a living, you know, what words would he use?
That's a good question. I've never asked him that. I mean, he's still very much, he sees himself in the Marxist tradition, you know. I don't think he's forgotten that. He has profound disagreements with large sections of it, you know. But he's an insider, you know. He believes in the overview of the Marxist tradition and wants to work inside that. Very clearly, still sees himself as problematically English. I mean, he's lived there for, you know, since 1951.
Yeah.
Doesn't still consider himself fully English. I think.
Does he go back to Jamaica? Did he ever go back?
Regularly, yes, regularly. And I think one of the profound regrets in his life was that he was never able to connect with Jamaica in the way that he felt he should have.
Right.
But you know, he's, as he says, you know, this is what the multicultural moment is. It's that moment when you're not able to go back and you can't fully embrace where you are.
Yeah.
There's that middle space, and that's the moment of multiculturalism.
Well, Snoop Dogg just went to Jamaica.
I heard.
He got himself redefined. He's now Snoop Lion. Can you imagine if Stuart Hall went
Dub Snoop.
Yeah, maybe Dub Stuart. Dub Hall. And then you could call the album the Stuart Hall Project.
You did.
Yes.
You did. Well, you know, since the Stuart Hall Project, as I hope people get to see the film, will understand, isn't just about the project, i.e. the film, but the project being his life. And that's really what we're trying to kind of nail here. When they see that, they will also see that we have a certain kind of open-endedness to this. You know, it could go on. the areas I didn't cover because I didn't think they were necessary for this.
Yeah.
So maybe a dub version might just be
remix. The 12-inch remix.
The Stuart Hall remix.
Yeah. How, like, just in terms of nuts and bolts, on a project like this, you're working 3.5 years, all this footage, all this archive, all this expense, and you're talking about someone who's a thinker in like a really academic traditional sense. Is it the case, do you go to academia and get academic institutions to help you fund this, or private sector? Well,
I mean, we were fortunate because firstly, we had made the argument to the BBC that this has a certain cultural public value, so they needed to support it for that reason. So they did. Wasn't money involved, but I mean, they committed vast resources. The British Film Institute, which is charged with making difficult films. Not that this is formally difficult, but I mean, in terms of sale, they thought it might be difficult. They came on board, and that really made a difference. The academic institutions like the Open University have material, because he worked for them for a number of years, and we needed that material. So persuading people to let go of resources sometimes is more difficult than asking them for money. But I think in the end, everybody understood that this was something we wanted to do, firstly for Stuart, because I think he deserved the project which said to people who know him principally as an intellectual from the 70s, you know, when the space of cultural studies opened, those people needed to know that he had prior lives which are as significant.
Right.
And that he went on to do other things beyond the confines of cultural studies afterwards.
Can the same be said of you from Black Audio Film Collective on?
I think so. I mean, these are not claims you can make for yourself, dude. I mean,
I'm asking you to be egotistical.
These are not claims you can make. You know, you can ask other people to say that.
Embrace your inner ego. John, stop being so nice. Tell me exactly.
Yes, you're right. I agree with you. I'm a new man. I've done it. Well, of course. I mean, you know, the thing which I suppose. It's a luxury, but when you get to do it, you understand that you're also benefiting from it. As we're putting this thing together, I can see him grow. I can see him making adjustments, recalculations, recalibrations of things, moving in that direction for a moment. You know, and of course that applies to me as well. You know, it would do, you know. Yeah. Black Audio was an organization and an arts collective I belonged to from 82 to 97.
Yeah.
It's a long time. You know, it's a long time and a large chunk of my life. But it ended in 97 and it's now...
It was for 15 years, it's now 15 years since.
Exactly. You know, so, I mean, I think a lot of... there's no way in which what I do now would be possible without that experience. I mean, there's just no way. You know, down specifically to the inherent respect that we learned in Black Audio for archival material. We just knew there was a value to it other than just as illustration. You know, that there was a way in which you can use archival material to structure narratives in their own right, not as a secondary, you know, subsection to a voice, or, you know what I mean? And it's particularly gratifying to have what is now sort of 96-minute film, 95% of which is archive, which feels as if it was always like that. And it isn't. I mean, everything in it's been constructed. Yeah. You know, it's made up of 400 films.
Is there a lost child? Is there something that almost made it in that didn't, that you're still in your head? Can you tell us what that is?
Well, there were one or two programs that he did for Channel 4 that I never found. One was an interview with CLR James. I found it as a sort of DVD, I just didn't find it as a real film. A couple of others, I'm trying to think. I mean, essentially, the bulk of what we've got in the film are his appearances on the BBC, both on radio and television. We didn't do that well with the commercial channels, and that's a regret. I don't think that there's anything, how can I put this, profound, which is in some ways echoed elsewhere in what we've got that we didn't get.
Yeah.
But you know, when you do archive things, you become anal. You just think, I want everything.
And now that it's locked though, it's locked.
But sod's law, now that it's locked,
And
the
screened.
9 out of 10 gems will turn up, proving me wrong.
Right.
You know.
Have you got is there a new master that's going to rule your life for the next few years?
No, I just want a break.
Take a holiday.
I just want to take a holiday and then think. I mean, you know, I'm trying to operate in these multiple worlds at the moment, you know, so I have a kind of fine art gallery existence, I've got this film and TV existence, and I just want to take a break for a bit, try and plot a course through the year, and that will be enough.
Yeah, re-engage with the creative.
Indeed.
Very cool. It's been a pleasure chatting to you for a few minutes.
Indeed.
Thanks so
Good
much.
to meet you.